The following video includes the thoughts of some of those who guided, coordinated, and led the recovery effort.
About 5 to 5 on that Monday morning, then the news comes on and it says 1/3 of Slave Lake is been burnt or is burning. I did not know what that meant to me, but I knew that this was going to change my life to some degree.
Local elected councils and their administrative staff were stretched to the limit. Some had lost their own homes. The town had lost its offices, files, and databases. Everyone knew someone who was displaced and traumatized. But they had to focus on transitioning from emergency response to recovery operations.
All of a sudden, when the state of local emergency is said that it's over, all these people disappear and you're kind of left there. Oh, well, where do we go from here?
When your village burns down, you can't leave, you can't run. And when you see the magnitude of what has happened, these are your friends, your neighbors, you dig in.
There was no roadmap. Initial efforts included tracking evacuated residents, finding housing, coordinating donations, and creating a plan to stabilize the burned areas, demolish destroyed structures, and remove debris, coordinating insurance industry response, and establishing a rebuild process.
First of all, we didn't know where they were, all of them. It's finding out who was returning, having that data, tracking people, took a tremendous amount of work.
If there was something set up, a website or whatever, just for municipal help, that the municipality with the problem could look at to see who was available or post what they needed and match up.
Once those early needs had been addressed, there was still much to accomplish. The province provided funding to hire additional staff and establish the Regional Recovery Coordination Office.
The size of the disasters of Slave Lake and High River, you do need that outside assistance because there is just too much to do.
It was tough as a business community. You really wanted to rise to the occasion. You wanted to be there for your customers. You wanted to show the town you were there to help in whatever capacity that you could. But that takes people, and those people were people that were dealing with the same kind of stuff.
Town staff burnout was a huge issue, more so after looking back than I even realized at the time.
The task force resolved that the recovery would be led by elected leadership from the town, the MD, and the First Nation. They were on the ground and knew the region and its aspirations. Over time, the regular meetings of elected officials became known as the Tri-Council, and provincial involvement decreased as the region evolved to a sustainable new normal.
Being in municipal affairs, I am a strong advocate and believer of local autonomy, that the MGA is built on municipalities having the authority to do things. I believe as we speak today, we are very close to that model.
I still respect the decision to let us stay in there and make those decisions.
Not one of us threw in the towel, although there was many days in which we wanted to.
But in the beginning, they needed time, resources, and a plan. And they needed to work together as a region to seize opportunities from the disaster and make the most of the province's investment.
Become friends with your neighbors before an emergency happens, because you're going to need them later. And I thought that was really interesting to hear people saying that. You know, you really need to forge those relationships early on.
That was the direction we'd receive from Premier Stelmach, is we need to try and make them whole again.
The task force and government personnel quickly began working with local officials to develop a comprehensive regional recovery plan. On May 27th, as the mandatory evacuation order was lifted, task force leader Tim Grant and other provincial personnel held an initial visioning session to urge local leadership to look beyond near-term cleanup and rebuilding requirements.
When you've lost your place and your family's been uprooted and you've got other things going through your mind, and you sit there and you try and be strong for your community because that's what they expect of you. You're an elected official.
Going from fighting fire for the first couple of days and you're physically and mentally exhausted, now you switch into the gear of you need to support your community and your personal life, your family has needs, and you know, all of a sudden the government shows up and they're very supportive, and there's things that they want to do, and you're focused on getting water and electricity back to your community, and then they say, let's have a visioning session and see what it's going to be like in 5 years, and you're thinking, my God, like, is this the right time?
We talked about what the values and what the community was looking for, what the character of the community was before the fire and what it should be after the fire.
But they didn't come in as Big Brother. They came in as a resource. They came in as a helping hand, and they looked at these 17 elected officials and their staff and said, how are you going to do it?
Local officials met frequently and often into the night to identify near and long-term recovery needs. Timelines were contracted, aspirations and needs focused, and budgets and scope recast, and the resulting plan was forwarded to Cabinet for approval in July.
At the end of the day, they made the decisions, and it was in tough circumstances. Some of them had lost their own homes, some of them had been unable to go back into their homes, yet over a very extended period of time, they devoted themselves completely.
We had a lot of very high caliber professionals come in to guide us. And they took the position of guiding us, not making decisions for us, leaving decision making up to us. But without that wealth of experience, we would have been all over the place. We would have really struggled.
When Tim and the team were able to present it to government, basically it was a realistic plan of how you would develop a recovery for the region.
On August 3rd, the Regional Tri-Council and the Government of Alberta announced the Lesser Slave Lake Regional Wildfire Recovery Plan. The plan's overriding objective was to return the region to its pre-disaster state, while ensuring that the communities are not socially, environmentally, or economically disadvantaged by the wildfire event, and are well positioned for future growth.
I remember the day that we made the announcement. It was at Rennie Hall Plaza. It was great. I remember, you know, the mayor and the chief and the reeve and the minister Goudreau standing making this announcement. And it was kind of surreal. From a municipal budget, we never deal, you know, in those numbers and those millions and millions of dollars.
We quickly put that plan together, and there were some broad areas we knew we needed to focus on and work on. But for the government to come out and support that, I felt like, wow.
The plan was built on 4 pillars. The highest priority was the overall well-being of regional residents. The fires impacted air, water, soil, and forests. Waste management was a huge challenge. Hundreds of residences, commercial, and government facilities were damaged or destroyed. Regional utilities such as water, sewer, gas, electricity, and private sewage systems were impacted. Demolition and reconstruction activities had to be closely coordinated. The plan was designed to support economic stability and help offset economic disadvantages resulting from the disaster.
I was so proud of the young managers and staffers that were working for me and had actually developed the plan. These are young Alberta public servants who were working 16, 20 hours a day, feeding them pizza and pop, and really from scratch and with a little direction and just them absorbing what the Tri-Council had talked about and what was important to them. They really produced a great document.
The scale of this disaster necessitated a new approach to provincial disaster support. The province committed a total of $289 million to regional recovery. This included $50 million in initial response and stabilization funding, a significant investment in interim housing that had to be in place before the snow came, and $64 million to locally identified projects articulated in the recovery plan. These range from wellness and community support, a major Fire Smart program, and a new regional water line. Being an elected official in a rural region is not a full-time job. But in the summer of 2011 and for much of the recovery period in the Slave Lake region, it was. Other jobs, family matters, and personal lives were put on hold. Recovery was all-consuming.
You go until you have to stop. You go back and you start again until you have to stop. And hopefully sometime in the future you get back to normal.
Most local officials don't think about disaster when they run for local office. And yet, that is always around the corner, whether it be industrial disaster, whether it be wildfire disaster or flood disaster.
The Tri-Council consisted of 17 elected officials from the Municipal and First Nations councils and an unelected third-party chair. Its mandate is to develop plans, direct staff, endorse initiatives, and be accountable for recovery investments. At first they met daily, then weekly. By the fall, they adopted an official once-a-month meeting schedule and an ad hoc meeting anytime an issue required discussion and decisions.
The guidance was so strong and so informed and so experienced that it made those decisions fairly easy.
Good for them. It's good people trying to do good things for the community, and I think it has been good.
And I struggle with the fact that 99% will never ever know how much we did, but I'm also okay with that.
As the Tri-Council evolved, the ongoing administrative load was assumed by the 2 municipal chief administration officers and the executive director of the Sawridge First Nation. Known as the CAO Secretariat, they met at least weekly and coordinated all research, administration, and coordination of the recovery as directed by the Tri-Council.
Days blend into nights. There's meetings. There's reports that I didn't get. The volume, quantity, frequency, email, social media, it's a whole new world.
The Government of Alberta provided resources to support the Secretariat and provided information and guidance to the Tri-Council. Known as the Regional Recovery Coordination Group, or RRCG, the team changed in size and composition and in time became a tight-knit 11-person team.
We worked on a daily basis with the CO Secretariat. I think in the end we saw ourselves as one group that was very strong in their belief in what needed to be done. It was a great learning opportunity for all the people that were in the team because we learned a lot about each other, first of all, and we learned a lot about each other's work.
Because of their expertise in various areas from the social networking to the social recovery, to the capital side. They were a big help.
Municipal councils meet and vote as equals, and the majority rules. This proved to be a challenge with 7 councillors from the town, 7 councillors from a geographically diverse MD, and 3 councillors from the First Nation. In a bold move, they abandoned the majority rules process, electing to use a consensus model. As a result, 17 diverse councillors had to agree they could live with any recovery decision, or it went back to the Secretariat to be reworked and represented.
Everybody can live with it. We have consensus. Thank you. That motion is carried.
3-4 months into it, I certainly understood why. You know, it was suggested and introduced, and as it evolved, I could see and appreciate how it worked and how it forced us to listen to the other party. And whether you supported it or not, could you live with it?
It also allows for, a sober second thought where you say, you know what, kind of looks like we want to be a part of it. I think that is an enduring legacy that can be used in other regions.
There was an evolution where all the projects for the most part became regional projects, and yes, there were individual ones that benefited. There's ball diamonds and certain things that benefited one more than the other, but I think everybody worked together to make sure everybody was treating everything as regional.
The key to an effective regional recovery was the ability of the 3 local governments and administrations to work together. The councils requested the ongoing support of an experienced governance expert the province brought in during the response phase. As a trusted advisor and Tri-Council chair, he helped develop a regional governance protocol. It detailed how the Tri-Council and Secretariat should mirror a well-functioning municipality and reflect best practices in municipal governance and operations. By endorsing and employing the protocol, they ensured consistency, predictability, transparency, and accountability. The resulting Slave Lake Regional Governance Model set a precedent for regional cooperation and development. It is considered the first of its kind for municipalities and First Nations working together.
This is one of those prime examples that we may be able to use for other municipalities and First Nations that are adjacent to each other to look at, can we actually work cooperatively so that we benefit everybody?
Whether it be politics or business, we talk about communication all the time. People want information and they want it now.
When the states of local emergency were lifted on June 1st, responsibility for communications transitioned to the local leadership. The region's traditional communications methods were not designed for the challenges presented by the wildfire recovery.
Those early community town hall meetings, those were awful. I suppose they were useful also, necessary, inevitable.
The public is not very tolerant at that stage, right? You know, it's not like, oh, gee, these guys got a lot to deal with. I'm sure they'll get us informed later. That's not how they react.
Community didn't distinguish between us or our families. They felt our kids or our wives probably knew the same info we did.
Council was right from the beginning. They knew, they didn't need to be told. They knew right away that communications were extremely important.
I know early on during the emergency, we quickly learned that social media could have played a substantial role. And we just weren't equipped or set up to manage that.
The recovery team created an ad hoc arsenal of traditional and digital communication techniques that leaned heavily on elected leadership, print materials, public meetings, and the goodwill of the weekly newspaper and the local radio station.
Social media is very much like the coffee shop. You may hear things that are somewhat related to reality, and then again you may not.
The town hall meetings were ferocious. I'll never forget after one town hall meeting where we had several people stand up and say, all of you should resign, you shouldn't be here, and the crowd, applauding. And that was astounding, to all of us council members sitting up there.
By 2012, regional communications had become more consistent, using techniques and channels developed for recovery. While many residents were getting back to regular routines, local officials continued to be fully absorbed by recovery work, and their progress needed to be communicated.
Slave Lake is not an easy place to put any type of structure. The most challenging thing was the fact that we had to get this done in 2.5 months. That was the time frame that we were given, which in normal times, it's usually a 2 to 3 year job. We had to devise a way of being able to move the work forward quickly, efficiently, effectively, and give the results that they were looking for, so that these poor folks that were out there in their tents would be in and adequately housed, and so they could move on with their life, even on a temporary basis.
We had children in our daycare at that time that we had never seen before. Families whose homes had burned and needed time just for themselves. And it was a place where parents could even just come and sit in the front and have a coffee and let their children play in the rooms.
This was, in many cases, an experiment for us. We were fortunate to have a lot of resources that were brought to us both by the province, and then also organizations like Red Cross and Salvation Army brought some of their experts in.
The recovery plan recognized the significant social upheaval caused by the fires and built in scope to address social recovery needs as they were identified. Tri-Council created a wellness committee, and a director of social recovery was established within the RRCG to work with local and provincial bodies to coordinate a variety of programs addressing medical personnel, students, teachers, and families.
And I'm not saying we don't have a lot of issues that we still have to deal with. That whole wellness and mental health issue, there's lots going on, but I think we're really fortunate that the province did help us out.
In August 2011, no one knew what a model fire-smart community might look like.
Well, I had to go to school. Immediately had to go to school and drag everyone I know with me to figure out what is fire smart.
The Tri-Council quickly assembled a fire-smart regional action team to begin planning and program design. What emerged is a model that can be adapted and scaled for other communities. Led by a regional committee, it includes investments in equipment, training, team building, public education initiatives, and vegetation management, all reflecting the 7 elements of FireSmart.
Our FireSmart regional cooperation will carry on for a number of years.
The fact is, they have made it a much safer region.
I can take out a map and I can prove to the people that have jobs like I have around the world that this makes it safer. If we don't get anything else out of this, it has to be that, you know, you can scale this to the size of what you can do.
That's the goal here, is to take what we've done and to make it so that it can be taken from one community and replicated in another community anywhere across Alberta, let alone across Canada.
At the start, they were unsure because it's new. Fire smarting is new for a lot of people, and you know, they just accepted the risk. And at this day and age, we can't accept that risk.
As we go along, it's picking up speed, and the local people are really jumping on board and supporting it.
There's something being done that if there is another wildfire, it's not going to be to the magnitude that this last one was.
Access to water was a big issue during regional firefighting efforts. It's also a key to the region's future growth. Initially, councillors had many individual ideas. In the end, Tri-Council endorsed a visionary multi-stage regional plan that would benefit all residents while addressing the needs of each council. The first stages, totaling $27 million, are now underway.
We got a great gift from the province to build the phases of the water line that we're going to build, and it will really help the region because, you know, we'll have a reliable intake, which right now is somewhat in question. It should improve the quality of the water as well, and we'll have a much wider distribution of the water, so both fire protection, residents, and some businesses, it will be a great asset for the region.
Community can't grow without water and sewer services. We've had challenges with water since the MD became an MD.
The Wildfire Legacy Project is a great example of opportunities that emerge after disasters. Shortly after the fires, several energy companies asked local leaders to identify a project that looked to the future, answered a community need, and could be a legacy to the resiliency of the region's population. As time passed, 12 donor companies formed a committee of the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, and the Tri-Council asked the community for ideas.
Really what the companies were interested in is trying to find some kind of a legacy, a long-lasting project that would be long-lasting to the benefit of the community and the relationship between industry and the community. The $6.4 million cumulative that we actually came up with, I think everybody was surprised with that and recognized we had some good initial response, and as we started to build interest out of our Board of Governors meeting, that number started to grow and grow.
On November 27, 2012, the CAP Committee and the Tri-Council announced a community gathering place to house a new daycare, a new Elks Hall and meeting place to be located on the site of the existing Elks facility. Estimated to cost $12 million, it could also serve as an evacuation center.
They consulted with stakeholders in the region. They came up with a project that everybody could get behind. The announcement of the Legacy Project and their commitment to fund that portion, I think, was a turning point when we went from rebuilding to, okay, now we're growing.
Since then, the Tri-Council, Secretariat, and RRCG has worked to develop architectural plans and a comprehensive budget and governance model for what is now called the Wildfire Legacy Center. Reflecting community input, the new $18 million project also includes a 500-seat theater and many innovative design features.
It exceeded our expectations of what would come together.
In the end, I think it will benefit the whole region. And I think it's something in 5 years we'll all look at and say, that's just great.
So it's been a long working process, but we're so happy to be part of it.
there's newness. And with newness comes excitement. And as you start a project, you start going, well, why did we do it this way before? So now the blinders, I think, are off and there's opportunity.
You can see that recovery is becoming a back burner. We're through a lot of that now.
Almost 3 years after the fire, the recovery continues as the Slave Lake region adapts to a new normal. The wildfires that ravaged the area will not be forgotten, but neither will the generosity of Albertans, Canadians, and international friends who came to the region's assistance.
And each community and each disaster is going to probably require, it's almost like a Mission Impossible team. You get the right people with the right skills to match the disaster, to match the capacity of the community too, to make sure that basically we're able to fill in the holes of support and basically build the capacity both in terms of fiscal resources, but also in human resources.
The recovery is well underway, and as the provincial mandate draws to an end, there's a sense of accomplishment, satisfaction, cooperation, and optimism.
It feels really good, honestly. I believe that beyond the projects itself, the regional framework is stronger today than it was before the fires took hold in the Slave Lake.
I will look back and I will be very proud of what's been achieved here.
I don't think we've attained the goal yet. Hopefully within a couple of years, yeah, we will.
We were really able to take a lot of projects and be able to align them and allow them to really work together and allow the region to really work together to be able to position it for growth.
There's a real sense of excitement that I sense amongst people in the collaboration that they're undertaking related to economic development and promoting the region.
I think the exposure of the disaster and the recovery and the approach to recovery has been a big boost to the area.
It's a thriving community again. You go down Main Street and there's lots going on. You know, we've got a lot of brand new homes. You know, so it's a community that's got its feet back under it and moving forward.
There's things that we lost that were replaced in a much better way, you know, and as a council member, I'm proud to have been part of that regrowth, that rebirth, making our community look better, feel better.
Well, in a lot of ways, I can only tell you what it's like for me and my family, and we have moved on and realize the community is better, it's stronger, and there's so much opportunity for the future. And you've seen lots of groups come together and rise to the occasion, be stronger than ever.
We have a new Reeve. He's already excited to talk to the mayor about some other new initiatives that they can do to help where regional cooperation works.
When we were struck with, we felt our disaster, it wasn't just our disaster. It was, you know, the province stepping in, other municipalities, you know, people across Canada and internationally. It was, yeah, pretty amazing.
The enduring legacy of this wildfire disaster is not just the new neighborhoods and community infrastructure, but the resiliency of the people and the increased sense of regional cooperation and capacity that working together during the recovery period has fostered.